one of life's most underappreciated talents is to know when it's time to move on to life's next chapter. So I stand before you today, Mr. President, and my colleagues, to say this will be my last term as Republican leader of the Senate.
Happy trails, Mitch McConnell. Let the games begin. As we speak, literally just in the last 10 minutes, it has been announced on the floor of the Senate, and we'll play the video for you in just a sec. Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, longtime majority leader for the Republicans, the senator from Kentucky, will be stepping down as majority leader. Spencer Brown over at Town Hall has the story. Following a record run as the Republican leader in the United States Senate, Mitch McConnell stepping aside from that leadership post this November, according to reporting from the Associated Press. He was first elected to the U.S. Senate in 1984. McConnell, currently the 13th longest-serving member of the Senate in U.S. history. The Kentucky Republican is also the longest-serving Senate party leader in the country's history. After becoming the Republican whip in 2003, McConnell rose to the position of minority leader from 2007 to 15, majority leader from 15 to 21, and then again as minority leader since 2021. And here's what it looked like on the floor of the U.S. Senate when Mitch McConnell made the surprising remarks. Nobody saw this coming, actually. Here's what he had to say.
Republican leader.
As some of you may know, this has been a particularly difficult time for my family. We tragically lost Elaine's younger sister, Angela, just a few weeks ago. When you lose a loved one, particularly at a young age, there's a certain introspection that accompanies the grieving process. Perhaps it is God's way of reminding you of your own life's journey, to reprioritize the impact of the world that we will all inevitably leave behind. I turned 82 last week. The end of my contributions are closer than I'd prefer. My career in the United States Senate began amidst the Reagan Revolution. The truth is, when I got here, I was just happy if anybody remembered my name. President Reagan called me Mitch O'Donnell. Close enough, I thought. My wife Elaine and I got married on President Reagan's birthday, February 6th. It's probably not the most romantic thing to admit, but Reagan meant a lot to both of us. For 31 years, Elaine has been the love of my life, and I'm eternally grateful to have her by my side. I think back to my first days in the Senate with deep appreciation for the time that helped shape my view of the world. I'm unconflicted about the good within our country and the irreplaceable role we play as the leader of the free world. It's why I worked so hard to get the national security package passed earlier this month. Believe me, I know the politics within my party at this particular moment in time. I have many faults. Misunderstanding politics is not one of them. That said, I believe more strongly than ever that America's global leadership is essential to preserving the shining city on a hill that Ronald Reagan discussed. As long as I'm drawing breath on this earth, I will defend American exceptionalism. So as I've been thinking about when I would deliver some news to the Senate, I always imagined a moment when I had total clarity and peace about the sunset of my work. A moment when I'm certain I have helped preserve the ideals I so strongly believe. That day arrived today.
All right, and there you have it. Mitch McConnell's farewell address, at least the announcement, I should say, to the United States Senate. He'll still give other addresses to the Senate between now and November, where he will officially step down as majority leader. If you're wondering, his term actually as a U.S. Senator goes through 2027, so he can still stay in the Senate for as long as he'd like. Should President Trump win the presidency, he will most definitely have a different majority leader to work with, and that's probably news to President Trump's ears. He's made no secret of the fact that he was displeased with Mitch McConnell's performance and his most recent priorities. In fact, I have to say, it's disconcerting that at this valedictory moment where Mitch McConnell can look back on his career, where all eyes are on him as he announces his intention to step down, that he doesn't take a moment and actually address his greatest legacy as majority leader of the United States Senate. Instead, he talks about our global role, the internationalism. Listen, I agree that we're a shining city on the hill. I agree that there is American exceptionalism. I agree that America is called to be a world leader. If we're not the world leader, certainly another country will step into that vacuum, and it ain't going to be Luxembourg. So I get that, but why continue to emphasize the global nature of your responsibilities as a U.S. Senator, when in fact Mitch McConnell has one of the greatest domestic legacies that truly will be part of his epitaph, for better or for worse. I can assure you, conservatives and freedom-loving Americans will, despite our concerns about Mitch McConnell and arguments with him at various times, will always celebrate his ability to get federal judges and Supreme Court justices on the bench for Republican presidents. Most importantly, the 3 Supreme Court justices that Donald Trump nominated, thus finally doing away with Roe versus Wade. And even more importantly, in one of the boldest, most courageous political decisions of my lifetime, Mitch McConnell defied the media, defied Democrats, defied the left, and withheld a hearing for Merrick Garland after Barack Obama nominated him to be on the Supreme Court in 2016. The pressure on him was enormous to have a hearing, let alone actually bring that nomination to the floor for a vote. I think that Mitch McConnell deciding not to allow the Merrick Garland nomination go through probably was the single most important political move of the last several decades. Not only did it keep Merrick Garland from the bench, and God knows, as we've seen his performance as the Attorney General, that is an unbelievably giant bullet that we all dodged as a nation. But it also left that seat open for the political election. Voters in 2016, when casting their ballot for president, knew that they were also casting their ballot for the next justice on the Supreme Court, selected by Hillary Clinton or selected by Donald Trump. And when Donald Trump then put forth that list of judges, that he would select from for that seat, I think that helped Donald Trump seal the conservative vote going into the election, who many conservatives, by the way, at the time, were suspicious of Donald Trump, considering his track record as a Democrat and a supporter of Hillary Clinton's, and had made statements in support of legalized abortion in the past. Everyone evolves, everyone changes, but you were skeptical. You were suspicious. We have an open Supreme Court seat for this presidential election. Donald Trump says it's going to be one of these guys, ended up being Neil Gorsuch. And well, the rest is history. That is Mitch McConnell's greatest legacy. You ask any conservative. By the way, it's going to be in his epitaph, in his New York Times obituary, from the left's perspective as well, because they hate him for that. They absolutely despise him for that. Why wouldn't you talk about that and brag about it in the first 3.5 minutes of this little valedictory speech that you're giving? That's odd, and I don't get it. I don't get why you immediately then lean on the international global challenges that you think is your job as a United States Senator? Oh, I guess I'll never be a senator because I'll never understand that. Mitch McConnell does have a historic track record, for better or for worse, just by the sake of his longevity. And there will be many things said and written about how he conducted himself. Sadly, though, I think he joined so many other politicians who overstayed and kept on well beyond the time where he could gracefully exit the stage and be most effective. We've seen his health and his capacity deteriorate quite a bit. And he knows, as many politicians know, just like our president knows, that out of deference, no one's going to actually tell the emperor what he's wearing. And everyone just stands around and gives due deference. I'm glad. I'm not sure what brought it on, but I'm glad that Mitch McConnell will now be able to enjoy an easier go at it. And I probably suggest that he should step down from the Senate as well and maybe make way for some fresh blood. And speaking of that, now the sweepstakes to replace him as majority leader begins in earnest. And there are a lot of names of people who would like that job. John Thune, who just incidentally endorsed Donald Trump for president earlier this week, will certainly be a front runner, the senator from South Dakota. You'll also see Rick Scott vie for the job, maybe even Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, and maybe some surprises as well. That job is a powerful one, an important one. And if, in fact, the Republicans do gain a majority this November, which I believe they will, and if Donald Trump does win the presidency, which, well, if the election were held today, the polls suggest he will, the majority leader, a brand new majority leader, will be critically important to fixing what's wrong with this country. Happy trails, Mitch McConnell. Let the games begin.